Shalom. You know, the first Jewish disciples continued in the traditional forms of synagogue worship. That doesn't imply, though, that Yeshua agreed with every detail of rabbinic teaching. Indeed, what he did was try to correct imbalances in rabbinic perspective. Ultimately, and that comes pretty much straight out of the Complete Jewish Study Bible. Ultimately, what it's saying is Yeshua challenged people to remain biblically balanced. And that stands out against anti-Semitism, against anti-Nomianism, against replacement theology, but it also stands against syncretism and an unrestrained love for Jewish religiosity. See, it stands out against anti-Semitism. These are Jewish believers. It doesn't make sense for believers to be anti-Semitic. Your faith comes from Judaism. It comes from the Jewish people. It stands out against anti-Nomianism. They were following the Torah. That's how they lived. The people who passed your faith on to you. Stands against replacement theology. These are Jewish people living a Jewish lifestyle. This was the faith that was shared. It also stands out against syncretism. They weren't living some new contrived thing that accepts other strange paganistic rituals. It stands out against unrestrained love for Jewish religiosity as well. It doesn't, just because Jewish people do something, that doesn't make it right either. There are a lot of debates about what's the right way to do this, what's the right way to understand that in Judaism in the first century, and there still is, quite frankly. So just because some branch of Judaism has a name that you like, say Orthodox. We don't like the name Orthodox, right? It means the right way, right understanding. Orthopraxy, Orthodox, the right. Well, if it's right, that's what I want to do. Well, consider who gave them that name. They give that to themselves. Everyone thinks that they have the right way, that they think they have the right practice. We need to weigh those things. We need to use discernment. We need to study and learn for ourselves so we know what's the right way and follow it, not just follow some people who claim that their way is the right way. We need to use our minds and think for ourselves. Also, what should leap out at you is that Yeshua did not challenge the Shabbat itself. He challenged different rulings, the ways certain people thought about Shabbat. For instance, it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. You know what? That's a principle of Judaism today, not just Messianic Judaism, by the way. You go to Israel, the people who are doing good work are working. Most of the country's off. Most of the country is on Shabbat. They're enjoying Shabbat, a day off, but the armed services are working. The hospitals are working. Even in Yeshua's day, this was an argument, and he showed which way was right, agreeing with certain parties and disagreeing against other parties. But it wasn't that he was choosing a side. He was doing what was right. He was showing who happened to be on the right side of that particular argument. And that's what a lot of his arguments were like that. A lot of the things he did. Okay, that's why he doesn't match up exactly with the Tzaddukim at the temple, or with the Perushim, the Sadducees or the Pharisees, or the Essenes for that matter. He did what was right, and some of them had this right, and some of them had that right. Even among the Perushim, the Pharisees, there were different groups that argued amongst each other on a number of different issues. Sometimes certain understandings were held in a particular region, and others held a different view in a different region. Sometimes it was down to individuals, the arguments. So don't look at your Bible when you read it and think all Perushim were evil, they all believed X, or they all believed Y. These debates that come up in your scriptures and your gospel in particular are with certain small groups or certain individuals. Just like the term Judean or Jew in the book of John is very widely misunderstood oftentimes because that term can mean many different things, and the context tells you what it means. Sometimes a Jew is a person from Judea as opposed to a person from Galilee. Sometimes it's an Israeli regardless of where they're from. Sometimes it's one of a particular group who in the context of that passage were Jewish. So you have to be careful. Okay, so he didn't challenge the Shabbat itself. He didn't challenge the synagogue itself. You see, all these believers in the first century and beyond for a little while were all worshiping in the synagogue, following Jewish tradition, saying Jewish prayers. Yeshua did this his whole life. Was he wrong? Are you really that arrogant to say he was wrong? I'm not. Was Yeshua doing it wrong? He wasn't doing it right. No, he was doing it right. Maybe it's time we accept that and follow his pattern. In fact, he didn't attack the notion of religious leadership either. Notice that. But he did confront abuses of authority by leaders. And he did confront incorrect rulings that went against the Torah. God put in place leadership at the temple. The Messiah, King Messiah, he wouldn't go against that. But he did go against corruption. He did go against abuse. He did go against erroneous theology and incorrect rulings, regardless of who made those rulings. And we should do the same. Think on these things. Shalom.